My presentation today is called Destination UK Traveller Trends and Types. And it consists, largely speaking, of two parts. We're going to start with a UK tourism snapshot, looks at the headline figures for the market, and then I'm going to look into what we've started doing at Euromonitor is to research different traveller types. And that is going to blend then into looking closer at luxury tourism in the UK. So, just a bit about myself. My name's Alexander Göransson. I'm, as Stuart mentioned, a senior consultant at Euromonitor International. I've been with the company for about 20 years and in the past 10 years focusing on travel. And we're a global business intelligence provider with 16 offices worldwide. I'm based at our head office in London. And so we do a wide range of industries, and I focus on travel. But enough with the self-promotion now. Let's go on to what you've come for, which is the UK tourism snapshot. So, firstly, our headline number. Our forecast for domestic tourism in the UK this year is 65 million domestic trips. Now, I need to come with some definitions here, and this data might be a bit different for those of you who saw the Visit England presentation earlier. We only look at trips with an overnight stay. And I've also decided to try and align this with the focus of the British Tourism and Travel Show by purely looking at what we call leisure travel. So we're excluding, unless we're otherwise stated, business trips and visits to friends and relatives. But when I was here last year, and what I really like about the British Travel and Tourism Show is it's a very friendly show. I had people come up and ask me, and there's also going to be a Q&A after, how do you actually do these forecasts? So on the screen here, we've got a shot from our travel forecast model. For inbound and outbound, we use an econometric model, which has, on total here, around about 20 different parameters, mostly economic. But for domestic, actually it's me, myself, doing the forecast. And what have I factored in when forecasting UK travel? So I started off with the economic ones here, like GDP, inflation, consumer expenditure. And that produced a very moderate forecast, indeed almost flat. But at the same time, I've also looked at more industry factors and more qualitative things like what's happening with regards to booking, pricing, demographic. And what interests me a lot is how domestic travel is doing relative to outbound. And finally, also consumer surveys. And that quoted a slightly more positive picture, especially with having a lot of advanced bookings at the moment. So, but one of the things that we've used is surveys. So this is a survey we conduct in 40 countries worldwide. In the UK, it's entailed 1,000 people have been asked. And the question has been, do you plan to spend more on travel and holidays in the coming 12 months? Now, what we can see here is, if you look, the dark blue dots are for 2023 when we last did the survey. So there's being a slight retraction in the number of people who think that they are going to be spending more on travel in the coming year. Now, I can see that's in part because there's an expectation that inflation will be slowing down. On the other hand, I think we need to see a positive as well. 55% of people expect they're going to be spending the same, 31% spending more, and that's actually more than a 24% who expect to be spending less. What's also interesting is that it's actually the younger demographics here, the 18-29 and 30-44, who say that they are going to be spending more. And that's one thing to keep an eye on when I move on to luxury travel later on. But here you can see how tourism has moved over time. And when it comes to domestic UK tourism, that's a dark blue field. That had a peak in 2022. That was a year of the lockdown. It's our assessment that we've also seen already figures for 2023 that cannot be sustained in the long term. The market's going to retract. But on the other hand, we've got an equally outbound travel. There's more competition now from traveling abroad. But what I want to highlight is that although domestic peaked in 2022 and is temporarily retracting 23-24, this line here, because actually all the years in this review period, the volume of domestic travel is actually higher than it was pre-COVID. And just a quick second to show you what's happening in the inbound phase. As we saw in the Visit Britain presentation, there's a mixed picture there with more people are visiting the UK or not. As you can see, that in the chart, that's the orange area, is going to be making up a lot of the shortfall in domestic travel. And we'll see a bit more closely on this slide how things are going to play out. Now, I'm breaking now from my sort of focus on domestic leisure trips. We're also covering visits to friends and relatives. That's VFR and business travel. And as you can see, we've got, for 2023, we showed a decline of about 7.5 million domestic trips. But actually, a lot of that is being made up for by business travel, useful if you're in hotels, or in leisure travel as well. And actually, totally anecdotally, when it comes to business travel, we are having a more optimistic forecast than Visit Britain. But what we're seeing is that actually meetings, incentives and conferences are growing very quickly. And I just noticed actually here in the NEC today how many more events are taking place than they were this time last year. But then again, from 2025, we're expecting the overall market to resume. And if I add in the inbound travel, as you can see, that's the orange line. Actually, with inbound and business, that has more than made up the shortfall in the decline in domestic leisure travel. And I think this slide shows that better than the previous charts. But now, moving on to the traveller segment, I'm going to give myself a little breather. But in terms of traveller segments, so at Euromonitor, we've identified 8 different traveller segments, and we've done those by consumer surveys where we've matched different questions and personality types with a traveller segment. So they range from, we've got the luxury seeker, then we've got the cultural explorer. That's going to be somebody who values very much immersion in a local culture, or when they're on site that they're going to take part in a cultural event or go to a museum. The leisure seeker, meanwhile, is more based on the availability of a packaged holiday or some kind of all-inclusive. The digital traveller might sort of wonder, what is that? And a digital traveller we define as somebody who is lost without the internet. That doesn't mean that they don't actually travel, because for all of these, you've had to have made one journey each year, and that's a journey abroad. So the digital traveller will research and travel digitally and make sure to post everything on social media and bring that with them. I'll walk you through the other traveller types gradually during the presentation. But as I mentioned, this is a survey, 40,000 people have been asked in 40 different countries, and we've identified on the back of that these 8 different traveller types. Now I'm going to drill in a bit deeper sort of for the UK specifically, and not unsurprisingly, the leisure seeker is the most common traveller type. Blended traveller is the second highest. I was actually here last year talking about them, but I used the term leisure travel at the time. That is people who combine business and leisure, so they take their work with them and work from away. We also have the adventure lover, which is more activity tourism. They've taken part in sport or a particular activity. And then I will be going deeper now on the the luxury seeker. And you may wonder, luxury seekers, that's actually the smallest of these. So why is he talking about luxury seekers? Well, it's not as small a group as you think. And then, of course, also there's the fact that it's a more affluent consumer group as well. But as you can see here, I've got now the proportion in our survey who we've defined as luxury travellers from the largest source markets to the UK, and they're ranked by order. And the UK, as you can see, actually has equal or more leisure travellers than all of our source markets except for the Netherlands. So the UK leisure traveller is actually a bigger consumer group than you think. So who are the luxury seekers? And this as well, it goes back to, I think, a demonstration of the methodology we had when we arrived at these different traveller types. So we have matched a luxury seeker to people who have responded to these questions. If they agree that it's important that other people think they're doing well and have taken at least 2 international leisure trips last year, and they agree that it's important to spend money on experiences, or they say that they would buy fewer things and instead go for better quality things. And indeed, experiences is a major thing within luxury travel. So a bit more detail on the characteristics of the luxury traveller. So 72% of them are very social. They will travel with a spouse or partner. They're also characterised by the human touch, because whereas online booking is big, and indeed the UK is one of the most important markets for online booking, at the same time they value human interaction. 34% would actually also want to book in store, for example, which is more than other travel types. But also we're dealing with a very optimistic consumer group here. The majority believe that they're going to be healthier, wealthier, and also have more free time, which is great if you're going to travel. And one thing that I did not expect when I pulled together the presentation, I should say this is now at a global level, but I would expect it to be the same in the UK. The consumer groups that actually favour luxury travel gravitate towards a younger age group. And if we remember from the slide earlier on with the expectations for how many, if people could be spending more or less on travel, it was a younger clientele who were expecting to spend more. So the luxury travellers are within the younger age group, which to me is a bit counterintuitive, because we've heard a lot about involuntary savings, sort of grey pound, built up savings amongst older people, but actually it's the younger ones who are travelling, doing luxury. And also, from a perspective of the luxury traveller, we found that they agree very much that it's important to spend money on an experience. As you can see, the first bar here with spending money on an experience is almost double for luxury travellers than the wider consumer segment. They also value real-world experiences, and going back to the personal touch, seek curated experiences. But they are also open for virtual experiences. And again, just to demonstrate a bit the impact on the luxury trend. So the chart here it's an index of our forecast growth in value for hotels by price platform. And as you can see here, the navy blue chart on top is luxury hotels, and that is the one that was already been showing strong growth, but we forecast luxury hotels to outperform all other hotel types in the UK. Now, as you all work in the travel industry, you will know that no two traveller types are alike, and there's a blending in with luxury travellers with some of the other travel segments. And I identified there was a lot of overlap with wellness worshippers. And they too are frequent travellers. They typically take 1 to 3 international trips per year. But above all, with the wellness traveller, they want to make sure that there is a wellness activity, such as spas, for example, in the destination. And also they are very willing to pay to take part in nature and outdoor travel features. Indeed, 10% of what we've identified as wellness worshippers are willing to pay up to 50% more for nature and outdoor features. And again, looking around the show here today, there's a great focus here on regional and rural tourism. But also, what I'd like to demonstrate with this slide is that there's actually an ability here to close the gap, because there is a strong interest in wellness tourism in the UK. I'm not good at left or right, but on this side we've got the top spenders on wellness packages. I know it's not a like-for-like match, because this is purely people booking as part of a package, and also packages are often outbound. But as you can see, the UK is globally the 4th largest on wellness packages, whereas in the other side we've got the leading destinations for wellness tourism. That's defined by spending on spas, medical tourism, and other wellness related. And for that, actually, the UK comes in, I think it's number 11. So there's a big gap here between spending on wellness by UK travellers and spending in the UK on wellness tourism. So the question there would be, what can be done to actually narrow that gap? Then we also have the eco-adventurer. So eco-adventurers, these are characterised by people who responded that they are very concerned about issues such as climate change. They will want to look at the sustainability of a venue before they travel. Again, we have Euromonitor, we've developed a sustainability travel index. I spoke about it here last year, so I won't go into more detail now. But crucially, what do the eco-adventurers seek? Well, they are very interested in real-world experiences, 87%, which is also a characteristic we see within the luxury traveller. And also it's very important for them, and they're willing to seek out more sustainable travel. And more importantly, also to be able to have an alternative from flying. And that leads us into the overlaps which I mentioned between luxury seekers and wellness worshippers and eco-adventurers. So in the chart here we've got some statistics based on our survey, and it's not just the eco-adventurers who are looking for an alternative to fly. It's also going to be the luxury travellers. A majority of them are willing to pay more to avoid the plane. And I think, again, if we're looking at UK domestic tourism, that's actually a very good sign, because I'm aware that there's a growing demand for cruises, which could be luxury and obviously do not entail flying. And there was Eurostar to the near continent. But realistically, if you want to go anywhere and not go by plane, it does actually mean staying within the UK. Similarly, the luxury travellers, they also prioritise sustainable travel features here. We've got around about 60% here saying they would pay 30 or more % on that. And also, again, it's part of the whole experiential personal trend which we see within the luxury traveller. They value very much the quality of food and dining at the destination. So to round this off with some key takeaways. So firstly, when it comes to the UK tourism outlook, we've got historically high numbers for domestic leisure travel. That's retracting slightly, but then it will start to grow again. And as I've said, it's always been higher than pre-COVID levels. So it's all from a high level. For luxury travellers, the clientele there is actually more likely to be found amongst younger age groups. And I think the key trend throughout, regardless of age group, with a luxury traveller is the great emphasis on the human touch. And also, which unites, let's say, the luxury traveller with a more eco-minded traveller, is the desire to have an alternative to flying. And that, as I mentioned, is a great opportunity for domestic tourism in the UK. But if you want to know more about luxury travellers, we have a blog post written on that. So here's a QI code you can access. Equally, I also have some other blog posts, one of which is on ETIAS, which is the European Entry and Exit System. And equally, I'm looking forward to this afternoon's presentation as well about ETA, to find out about that, which I'm going to be writing about as well. So feel free to visit our blogs for loads of information, including luxury travel. Also, part of our methodology, it's not just looking at economics and published data, as I mentioned earlier. We try to interact with a lot as possible regarding trends in the industry and understanding the story behind the numbers. So I know there's going to be a Q&A now straight after this, but also I love talking to people. So if anybody's interested in having a half-hour call or a discussion about travel with me, then please let me know. I'm interested. And also, you've got my contact details on screen.